who is suing Gwyneth Paltrow for an alleged collision on the ski slopes in which he is alleging that Gwyneth Paltrow caused it and caused him injuries, including a broken rib and a traumatic brain injury. Right now, the plaintiff's daughter is testifying. So let's go into court, take a look at some of that testimony right now.
I believe that I got an email that said, "I'm famous," in the subject line, and I was like, what are you talking about? And then below there was a link that said, here is information, I may not be quoting it exactly right, from my friend and eyewitness. And then there was a link below. And that link below, I couldn't ever look at it because you had to be like a meetup member or something. But I have a vague recollection of actually calling my dad and saying, can you give me your meetup group number so I can actually look at this? And he was able to give me that information. So I may or may not have seen what was in that link.
You don't remember the day of hitting that link and knowing what it was?
I don't know for sure at what point I looked at it. Just a little background information. I had a ski accident 3 weeks prior to my dad. I had torn my ACL and my MCL. I was not sleeping very well. I had my leg propped up on a pillow with ice around my knee. And I also had a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old to take care of at the time. So my memory of what happened during that period is very foggy.
That's fine. I'm going to put up that email, or at least the paper copy of the email. And this has already been marked as, I think, Defense Exhibit 111. And it's been discussed quite a bit. But,
D102 is the same thing and will be a lot clearer if you want it. Do you want it?
well, we're going to go through this just the way it is right.
Well,
Hey,
I
know
object because the top portion is not evidence.
Why don't we take it down and why don't you use the exhibit that has been, unless you need for some reason to enter this one, Mr. Sorensen?
This is okay as he's doing it, Your Honor. Just the top third is not evidence.
Well, I'd rather that the jury not be published a document that hasn't been admitted.
All right.
I want to make you all aware that you are giving out information when we're looking on these private information. Could you please white out the email addresses, or would that take too long?
Sure.
Or you could just fold over that piece of information. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, jury.
That was a reasonable request.
Thank you. Defense 102.
Thank you, counsel.
We've discussed this quite a bit, and we will continue to. Do you see that up on your screen, Shay?
I do.
And are you the Shay Harrod that's right up here?
I am.
Okay. We'll go through this a little bit, but I want to point out a couple things.
Okay, so some suggestions from the witness stand there on how to handle that piece of evidence. Found that pretty interesting. Let's bring in my guest to talk about what we're seeing right now. So, Anne, let me start with you. This is the plaintiff's daughter, and we've seen her testify on direct so far, really giving some, I don't want to say self-serving, but let's say father-serving testimony.
Right, I can say father-serving.
Yeah, you know, on that direct examination there. Where do you think this testimony is going, and what sort of points do you expect that the plaintiff's attorneys are looking to score through the daughter's testimony here?
Well, they've made him to be so likable and, great character and everything like that. So They scored big points as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he's a girl dad. I mean, the best evidence of what a great job he's done is these 3 girls have been very likable, very accomplished, and very complimentary to their dad. And by the way, they get really teary when they talk about this. So it makes it real. They went through this themselves. And I think they've scored enough. I did find it amazing that this is basically the lawyer for dad, and she's saying you're doing a bad thing. Ouch. I mean, that was not good. That'd be okay if it'd be with the other side, with Owens, and saying you're publishing private information, but their own side is publishing private information. So I thought that was, problematic. And like, Catherine said off the air, they look unprepared. I mean, you definitely white out things like that. You don't put people's, email addresses in front of people, especially in a high profile trial.
Yeah, no, I agree. Listen,
Right.
You always have to have your evidence prepared in the right way, and that's redactions. And that would be redactions
Right.
that the witness herself is pointing out in court. I agree that would be something that you'd be like, and how's the jury taking that? Catherine, I want to get your perspective of what the defense attorney, the defense table is sitting there, and I think you saw Gwyneth Paltrow reaction to the witness sort of pointing out the redactions or asking for the emails not to be published to the jury or in public. If you're sitting there at the defense table and you're seeing this testimony coming out, I mean, you haven't really objected as some of this testimony was being put forth before that jury. So what are you doing in terms of a game plan for cross-examination of the plaintiff's daughter like this?
Well, we can see that she's very emotional on the stand. So if I'm going to cross-examine her, I will be very not confrontational, because she's teary-eyed with certain things that we wouldn't expect her to be teary-eyed, and she's very likable. So I wouldn't want to be confrontational against her. Now, I have to point out, though, that as a defense attorney, I would be concerned of how emotional she is right now, because at the beginning of her testimony, she started crying, describing that one of her dear friend just passed away recently. So that might be causing her to be more teary-eyed than usual, and if she's actually in this right state of mind to testify at this moment. And I feel for her and her loss, but it's something that the defense need to address and maybe ask the judge to talk about that sidebar.
Yeah, really interesting testimony so far, just by the nature of how it was able to come into court without objections from the defense table there. We're going to take a quick break, but before we do,